Bernie Sanders wins New Hampshire, and we talk about the dangers of socialism. My name is John Clinton, and this is the God in Freedom Show. Alrighty, guys. I hope everyone has had a great week so far. Happy Friday. But we don't actually have a lot to get to today because honestly, it's been a kind of a slow news week so far, and I mean we kind of needed it because this year has been just absolutely insane so far. Like ever since like January 1st, like when Soleimani was killed, the news cycle just been kept going and going and going and going. So thankfully, we have some kind of a little break going here, but I think probably the biggest thing that happened this week was the New Hampshire primary that happened for Democrats, or for every party, but the biggest part was Democrats. So let's just jump right into it. So yeah, this New Hampshire primary, this primary so far has been good for Bernie Sanders, but just bad for Democrats all around. Because while Bernie Sanders has been winning, seemed like he won Iowa, we still don't know the actual results yet. They're still like kind of counting. But we definitely know New Hampshire, and he definitely won New Hampshire. So it looks like Bernie Sanders is running away with this so far, But probably the biggest part of all this is that the Democratic turnout for both of these elections right here have been awful, just completely awful. And it just tells you the enthusiasm behind all of the candidates we have here. Like pretty much all the Democratic candidates are just awful, and people are just not excited about it. And to look at President Trump and say, okay, I mean, we got a good economy. Yes, he said some great things, but we got a good economy. We're not in a war or anything, so just stick with him. I'll take him over like all these crazy people. But yeah, so let's get on to like actual official results for the New Hampshire primary, and I mean it was pretty close race for at least the top three were Bernie Sanders, Pete Buttigieg, and Amy Klobuchar. I mean, Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders were probably the closest right here. So, but Bernie Sanders didn't end up winning New Hampshire. And you see, the total number of votes that Bernie Sanders won was 76,324 votes total. And Bernie Sanders won about 26% of the votes, which, I mean, yeah, considering like past Democratic winners in New Hampshire, that's pretty low for the most. Like, that just tells you the kind of enthusiasm behind Bernie Sanders, because I mean, yeah, it's not looking good for Democrats. So with Pete Buttigieg, he won about, let's say about 24.5% of the votes, and that was about 72,457 votes total. And Amy Klobuchar came in at 58,000 votes with about 20% total of the votes. But everybody else just did pretty badly. Elizabeth Warren finished off with about 9% of the votes. And here's the most crazy part right here. Joe Biden, who was the perceived front runner for months at this point, literally a month ago, like he was the top tier candidate for the whole entire primary for Democrats. Like he was in the low 30s to upper 20%, I think, especially in New Hampshire too. And suddenly, he just collapsed. He got 5th place in New Hampshire, 5th place. And his total number of votes that he got in New Hampshire was about 25,000 votes. And he won 8% and that's about 8% of the votes. That is bad for Joe Biden right there. He's done. And Elizabeth Warren is done too. And then in 6th place, Tom Steyer, like got sixth place. I mean, honestly, I keep forgetting that he's actually running. But he's like he's obviously going nowhere. And the other kind of candidates didn't do jack in New Hampshire. So yeah, I mean, it looks like if Bernie Sanders Bernie Sanders so far looks like he won Iowa and has won New Hampshire, and if he wins like Nevada, like it's pretty much done at that point. He's definitely like has a fair shot to get in the nomination for Democrats, and yeah, I mean, like I said before with Bernie Sanders, like, there's just no way possible that he had a prayer against President Trump. Just no way possible, considering like he's just pretty much a full blown like communist pretty much, like just yeah. I mean, there's no way the American people are gonna be up for that in coming November. But I mean, seriously, like Joe Biden, like I've never seen a political class like that before. Like see, like Joe Biden has been on the top for pretty much the entire like Democratic primaries. Then just suddenly right when the election happens, he just drops all the way down. It's pretty telling. So he's probably gonna drop out pretty soon. So and probably most of his votes are gonna go to maybe Amy Klobuchar, but again, like Amy Klobuchar doesn't have. I mean, she's doing pretty well for the most part, but I don't think she's going to be a nominee. But Democrats seems like they don't want a moderate to win the primaries, which is kind of stupid on them. Like if they would have gotten Joe Biden or like you say Joe Biden, but not really anymore. But Amy Klobuchar, probably would have been like the one that most likely to beat President Trump in the election. But because she is like very moderate and everything, like the votes she won in Hampshire were like some religious kind of independent voters and all that. So, I mean, in a general election, she would have a fair shot. But Democrats are so stupid that they wanted the most radical guy to become the nominee. And again, that's not going to be good for them in the general election at all. But there's, again, no way that he's going to beat Trump whatsoever. But, I mean, again, yeah. I mean, as we go throughout this primary season all the way to Super Tuesday, we should expect to see more people dropping down. Like probably Elizabeth Warren, probably, I think it's going to be the next one to drop out, the next major one. And Joe Biden is going to probably be, it's going to probably do something stupid like just try to stick around all the way until, stick around as long as he can, even though he's going to probably be at 0% at the end of this. But I don't see him dropping out anytime soon, even though he should. But we did have some people drop out, one of them being Andrew Yang. He was one that dropped out, and some kind of the minor candidates, but Andrew Yang was kind of the major one that dropped out. And I know, like with Cory Booker and then Kamala Harris, with them, I did the whole little funny little tribute kind of thing, and kind of made fun of them a little bit. But I'm not gonna do that with Andrew Yang, because honestly, I actually like Andrew Yang. Like I didn't like any of his policy ideas whatsoever. Has some weird policy ideas, but he was not a full blown loon whatsoever, and he was actually like a nice guy. Like compared to everybody else, like he was actually a good guy that you want to be like friends with. And another thing that's for him that sticks out for him from the rest of the Democrats, that he actually loves America. I mean, I think Joe Biden deep down does love America a little bit, but like definitely Andrew Yang has definitely an American story. Like his parents were immigrants to America, and they didn't have really nothing, but then they started a business and they grew that business pretty good, and like he continued on their legacy. and now he's running for office. So I mean, he has a kind of American story. He does have a love for America that you don't see in the Democratic Party anymore. So yeah, I mean. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, he wasn't gonna have a prayer become the nominee, but again, like he was the one of the most unique kind of Democrats that run very in the recent years for the Democratic Party. So I mean, hopefully, pretty soon, like more people like him and who are more moderate in nature are gonna be running the Democratic Party more, because Democrats are not going to survive like continuing like nominating like radicals or just people who are just unlikable. They're just not going to survive that. But I mean, while Sanders doesn't have a shot beating President Trump, it does like say kind of something about like how he's going to be the nominee. That is because he's a full blown communist pretty much. And that just tells you like how this warm people have gotten to socialism, and I think that's part of the just kind of the collapse of the education system that just happened. Like you don't learn the actual like thing, like what actually happens in socialism. And like Bernie Sanders like always tries to want to run away from the label and everything. Like he says, if by socialist you mean that I'm for nationalized healthcare, then yes or he wants everybody to have a good of college for free, then yes I'm a socialist, or something like that. But I mean he always plays that game all the time. It's really annoying. And he always tries to run away from the socialist like label and everything. He calls himself a Democrat socialist, even though I mean his ideas are not really fall in line with what a Democratic socialist is. Just not even close. He's pretty much a full blown communist. But here's like kind of a video from last year about him talking about this, and yeah, it's pretty telling.
I do understand that I and other progressives will face massive attacks from those who attempt to use the word socialism as a slur. But I should also tell you that I have faced and overcome these attacks for decades, and I am not the only one. Now, let us be very clear. While President Trump and his fellow oligarchs attack us for our support of democratic socialism, they don't really oppose all forms of socialism. They may hate democratic socialism because it benefits working people, but they absolutely love corporate socialism that enriches Trump and other billionaires. Our job 75 years later is to complete what Roosevelt started. And that is why today I am proposing a 21st century economic Bill of Rights. A Bill of Rights that establishes once and for all that every American, regardless of his or her income, is entitled to the right to a decent job that pays a living wage, the right to quality health care, the right to a complete education, the right to affordable housing, the right to a clean environment, and the right to a secure retirement.
So basically, his main pitch is like to give out like everything is the right for people of America, and everybody deserves this stuff for free, like a good job that pays a good wage, or like good free health care or whatever, and then it's like free college tuition. And like the only way for that to happen is a full blown government takeover of everything. And while he like doesn't want to admit that, that's what he's advocating for. So, and the idea that it will help the American people, like American workers, is complete nonsense. It will hurt American workers, and because I mean, capitalism has done way more for people, lifted way more people out of poverty than socialism ever did. Socialism has never taken people out of poverty. Never. Because I mean, that's not. It's just because the system of socialism is complete garbage. So to kind of give you kind of more kind of details behind, let's go over kind of a brief history of socialism and all that. So like this is according to like history.com, which is basically the history channel and everything, and like they have a section on socialism, and here's what it says. Socialism describes any political economic theory that says the community rather than individuals should own and manage property and natural resources. And like that whole idea of like the community like should be above like individual rights, the communal rights above individual rights, that kind of comes from the French Revolution, which that's where they had the centralized ideas for the French Revolution was the whole community rights over individual rights. And like the French Revolution overall was just completely awful, and then like the ideas came out of it, which is the thing that led into like in the 20th century with the Soviet Union, the Nazis in Germany, and everything. So it continues right here. The term socialism has been applied to very different economic and political systems throughout history, including utopianism, anarchism, Soviet communism, and social democracy. And it's basically kind of the idea is just that everybody under socialism is basically equal, and you get equal like pay and everything, but it has to be all controlled by the government. That's the only way it will work. And kind of like this whole thing actually emerged from a guy named Karl Marx, who was a big advocate for this kind of stuff right here, the full equal rights and everything, equality of outcome, actually, and that's where like this whole communism and socialism came from. And yeah, it just led to some awful stuff. And so obviously, for example, like in the 20th century, we got the Soviet Union and everything. So before we get to that, let's go over like Karl Marx to see like how he influenced right here. It was Karl Marx, undoubtedly the most influential theorist of socialism, who called Owen Foyer and other early socialist thinkers utopians, and dismissed their visions as dreamy, unrealistic. For Marx, society was made up of classes. When certain classes controlled the means of production, they used that power to exploit the labor class. In their 1848 work, The Communist Manifesto, Marx and his collaborator Friedrich Engels argued that the true scientific socialism could be established only after a revolutionary class struggle, with the workers emerging on top. And okay, so I'm going to continue on talking about Karl Marx, and then to continue like what other what countries have adopted this idea and not failed. But you're gonna have to go over to YouTube to hear the rest of it. So yeah, remember you can Not only will you get the rest of like when I talk about the dangers of socialism, you also get what I'm go over. Continue on in the book of John. I'll be starting John chapter 8 today. And then you can get at the back half of the episode, you can get the good stuff and bad stuff of the week and all that. And remember, you can find me on your favorite podcast listening sites, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Otherwise, I'll see y'all next week. This is the God of Freedom Show. Alrighty, guys. So let's continue on right here. So with Karl Marx, well, he's like basically like his whole idea is that the workers will be the one controlling the labor and the money and everything, but that has never happened in socialism at all. Never. It's never ever worked. So the other the countries that have adopted. It has adopted socialism and communism. It's obviously the Soviet Union was probably the biggest one, and obviously that didn't work out at all, and like, millions of people died during that time. But obviously some other like countries that adopted it was Vietnam, Cuba, China, North Korea, Venezuela has adopted it too. And like most of those are still today communist states, and they're just completely disastrous right now. Like look at China. Like their health system is just awful. Their economics, like their overall health is just bad, and we got the coronavirus spreading throughout there, and their government is just completely awful. So, and the North Korea is obviously a complete, utter nightmare for people there. And Venezuela is just completely collapsed themselves. So yeah, I mean the idea that socialism is going to eventually work is completely nonsense. And the whole like idea that people like to say socialism, it works in theory but doesn't work in practice, or it's good in theory but it's not good in practice. No, it's not good at all. It's not good in theory or in practice. Like socialism is just, it's completely immoral. Let's just be honest, it's completely immoral. Like the idea that the government has the right to come to me, take my money and give it to someone else to make it fair, it's theft pretty much. Like it's completely immoral. And like what Democrats like to say is like, so you hate people because you don't want higher taxes. No, because we want to give our money voluntarily through charities and everything. And like the vast majority of people who give to charity are conservatives and Christians and all of them. And like Democrats, they like the left, like they do give charity, but not a whole lot. There are more ideas. I think that the government should be taking care of the people, not like private charities. So their idea of charity is raising taxes on people, and it never works. It never ever works. And the idea it's ever going to work is just completely another nonsense. And like this is kind of exactly why, right here. Goodness. And this is why that Bernie Sanders, why he cannot win at all. Like if he's a nominee, he cannot be given the power of the presidency, because there's so many bad things that will happen if he does, especially if Democrats win both the Senate and the House in November. Like we're gonna go down a bad road. And this is the time where like conservatives need to stand up against socialism. Like even if you don't like Trump, if you thought you didn't vote for him in 2016, like definitely consider voting for him this time, because the danger, the danger of like what Bernie Sanders is pushing, is far more greater than the stupid stuff that President Trump says. Far more greater. So, like again, like I said a million times, like Trump says stupid things on a daily basis, and like his character, he doesn't like his character is abysmal to me. But I'd rather take that over what Bernie Sanders is offering all day, every day. And plus, like, we have gotten a good economy, a good policy, and everything. So, I mean, that's not a choice. That's a pretty easy choice to pick. Like, and I really hope that like other conservatives will see that, especially conservatives who didn't vote for President Trump in 2016. I know like most conservatives who didn't vote for him are saying they're going to vote for him, but there are definitely some who are still not planning to. I really hope they reconsider, because especially if you don't want Bernie Sanders to win, like really, you need to try to do whatever you can to stop him from winning. So yeah, I mean, again, like socialism, just complete and utter nightmare, garbage stuff. It's just completely garbage. Alrighty, so kind of some other stuff that happened this week is just, again, not much happened this week. I mean, it's been kind of a slow news week, and like I said earlier, like we kind of needed it. But kind of something else that did happen was with this whole thing with William Barr, Attorney General William Barr, about that President Trump tweeted out that he wanted William Barr to protect Roger Stone from being indicted and sent to prison and everything. And this is a prime example of Trump saying stupid things that get him into trouble and all that. But I mean, thankfully, William Barr actually came out and said, "Okay, President Trump didn't actually personally, say this to me at all. But I do wish, he would stop tweeting stuff out to make my job easier and everything." And he has a point. Like the thing is, when President Trump tweets stuff out, stupid things out, it makes the job of people in the administration much harder. Much harder. So I'm thankful he hasn't come out and just completely gone after Barr for this. He actually said he didn't find their comments troubling or anything, which is kind of a good thing. But again, good on Barr for saying this. It is something that needed to be said for a long time. Oh, excuse me. But, alrighty, so yeah, I mean, again, it's been a slow this week. So, let's get into some scripture real quick. So, again, we'll be starting in John chapter 8 today. So, I mean, yeah, you can, you can follow me along. Well, let's pull this up first. Yeah, once again, you can follow me along with me, and I'll be the New Living Translation. Jesus returned to the Mount of Olives, but early the next morning, he was back again at the temple. A crowd soon gathered, and he sat down and taught them. As he was speaking, the teachers of religious laws and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in an act of adultery. They put her in front of the crowd. "Teacher," they said to Jesus, "this woman was caught in an act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say?" They were trying to trap him into saying something they could use against him, but Jesus stooped down and wrote in the dust with his finger. They kept demanding answers, so he stood up again and said, "All right, but let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone." Then he stooped down again and wrote in the dust. When the accusers heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with a woman. Excuse me, sorry. Then Jesus stood up again and said to the woman, "Where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you?" And she said, "No, Lord." And Jesus said, "Neither do I. Go and sin no more." And this is kind of big illustration right here. This section of chapter 8 right here is really an illustration of the gospel and how, like, Satan is basically the accuser in this, like saying, like, you did this, like you sinned, that you should punish you and everything. But here comes Jesus, like, coming in and, like, basically saving us from the punishment that we deserve for the sin. And I mean, it's really cool, like how, like, he routinely did this throughout the Gospels. And obviously, the key phrase right here that really, the biggest thing when we repent and return to Jesus is that what we need to do is, turn away from our sins, and this whole idea of repentance. So do like what he says right here. He said, like, either like go and sin no more. That's pretty much what we need to do when we're saved. But it continues right here. Jesus spoke to the people once more and said, "I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness, because you will have the light that leads to life." The Pharisees replied, "You are making those claims about yourself. Such testimony is not valid." Jesus told them, "These claims are valid even though I make them about myself, for I know where I come from and where I'm going. But you don't know this about me. You judge me by human standards, but I do not judge anyone. And if I did, my judgment would be correct in every respect, because I am not alone. The Father who sent me is with me. Your own law says that if two people agree about something, their witness is accepted as fact. I one witness, and my Father who has sent me is the other." "Where's your Father?" they asked. Jesus answered, "Since you don't know who I am, you don't know who my Father is. If you knew me, you would also know my Father." Jesus made these statements while he was teaching in the section of the temple known as the treasury, but he was not arrested because his time has not yet come. All right, so we're going to kind of stop there for now, but yeah, I mean, the whole, Jesus the light of the world thing is completely true, right there. Like, whenever, without Jesus, you're pretty much just walking in the dark all your life. You're just kind of wandering, like where to go, and like you don't know which path to go. Like, what's your purpose? But when we have Jesus in your life, like, he has that light that guides you on the path that God wants for you. So, I mean, it's pretty cool, really cool stuff right there. And it's just kind of mind-boggling that despite all the things that Jesus did and everything that he said and did, is that the Pharisees just completely refused to believe who he actually was. Either that, or they just deliberately said they didn't believe, or maybe they did believe, they just don't want to admit it. They were just afraid of changing their lives. So yeah, next week we're going to continue on with we went through the verse 20 today. So next week we're going to start with verse 21 and possibly finish it. I don't know yet. We'll see how it goes then. Alrighty, so let's get into some good stuff and bad stuff of the week. Excuse me, sorry. That was kind of tickly. So, some good stuff of the week is, Stranger Things is, obviously, it's a show on Netflix. It's a really, really good show on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, I'll definitely recommend watching it. For a while, I was hesitant to actually watch it because of just all the hype that was around it and everything. So I was thinking it's probably overrated and everything, but actually sat down and watched it. Like, I watched the first episode, and I was like, okay, this is actually really good. And I continued to watch the first season into the second season, and then eventually when the third season came out, I watched that. And it's a really good show. It's probably one of the best shows on Netflix right now. So, and obviously, so soon season 4 is going to come out pretty soon. I don't know when it's going to be released. But today, actually, they released, probably, or last night or today, they released the teaser trailer for season 4 of Stranger Things, and it's actually really good. It's an interesting surprise. If you haven't seen season 3 yet, I would definitely skip over this because there are some spoilers from it. You don't want to be spoiled for. But if you honestly seen season 3 all the way through, this probably won't be a shock. But let's play the video. So yeah, pretty awesome stuff right there. And so obviously, if you watch season 3, again, if you watch season 3, just skip over the good stuff all around because there's gonna be some spoilers come along. But for people watch season 3, obviously is that what happened at the end is that Hopper is perceived dead. But obviously, we all knew when we were watching that he likely wasn't dead because we didn't see his actual body. We didn't see him actually die. That's rule number 1 for movies and TV shows. If you don't see the body at all, and you don't see the person actually die, they're likely not dead at all. And again, that's proven true again with Hopper. And obviously, it was teased at the end of season 3 where it goes back to Russia and pulling out a prisoner, and they said, no, not the American, to one of their prisoners. So that's obviously a tease. That was probably Hopper. And so it's interesting. It'd be interesting to see how he got there to Russia. My guess is he probably was able to jump into the upside down somehow, and was eventually came out on the other side with Russia or something like that. That's my guess. But I guess we'll find out in season 4. But it'll be interesting to see how the season goes, because we got the Demogorgon coming back, the actual Demogorgon, which will be interesting, and to see if the Mind Flayer comes back or anything. And I really want to see them explore more into the other kids that were being held at Hawkins' lab, with 11 and that other girl. I forget her name. It's interesting to see other people have different other powers or something like that. So it's pretty cool stuff. I'm really excited for this season. And again, if you haven't seen Stranger Things at all, I definitely recommend it. It's definitely worth getting Netflix for. Alright, let's get into some bad stuff of the week. So some bad stuff of the week is... So President Trump basically came out with this executive order that he wants to basically make architecture great again. In other words, he wants to remodel the buildings in Washington, D.C. to make it more beautiful and everything. Because let's face it, some of the buildings in Washington D.C. I've been in Washington D.C. before. Like some of them are pretty bad. Like the FBI building is just completely bland and everything. You compare that to the U.S. Capitol and the White House and the Supreme Court building. Like those do like the FBI building, for example, don't even compare to those buildings. So like this executive order is going to do is basically he wants to like have these big building like significant government buildings become more like the Greek style type of buildings right here. It's pretty. I don't know how I feel about it being like executive order and the government being fully in charge of this, but I guess it sort of makes sense in a way. But the left went completely insane over this whole thing. It's hilarious. They're saying that this is part of white supremacy and everything. So there's a couple pieces I want to go over about this whole thing. One's from The Guardian and one's from Forbes. So here's the piece from The Guardian. It's pretty hilarious. And it's titled, "Will Trump Make Architecture Great Again? The Dark History of Dictator Chick." I don't know whether that's supposed to be dictator chick or dictatorship. Alarm bells ring and hearts sink in the design world with news of a proposed executive order from Donald Trump stipulating that the classical architectural style shall be the preferred default style for all future federal buildings in the United States. Which makes sense. I mean, you want these, and those type of buildings are pretty nice. I've been inside the Georgia Capitol, for example, and it's designed in the classical like architect. It's really nice. And I've been up to, close to the U.S. Capitol before. It's, really nice stuff. So it does make sense it does make sense for other federal buildings to be designed like this. So, anyways, it continues right here. The draft order disparately titled "Making Federal Buildings Beautiful Again" argues that neoclassicism symbolizes the founding fathers' self-governing ideals, whereas contemporary styles such as brutalism and deconstructivism are incapable of embodying America's national values. This is actually completely true. This is like what President Trump is saying right here, according to the executive order. I think it would be true. Like the old classic design of these other buildings, like the Capitol building, the White House, are a symbol of the American values that we hold dear. The individual rights and everything. And so I see why President Trump want to design other buildings like this, because he understands the values of America, the actual values of America, unlike Democrats. It continues right here. Those values can now only be expressed by imitating a 19th century interpretation of what people were doing in Roman Athens millennia ago. For a property tycoon whose own architectural tastes lean towards international style skyscrapers of lots of skinny trimmings, Trump could be seen as throwing stones from a mere glass house here. But his penchant of neoclassicism also brings to mind more retrograde, even sinister associations. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Europe's classical revival sought to reconnect to an idealized past, alluding to values of order, rationality, and morality. These proved to be illusionary given the bloody warfare that was to come. Hitler's chief architect, Albert Speer, also appropriated the tradition of grandeur of neoclassicism to serve the Nazi project as Benito Mussolini's fascist Italy used use it to recall Maito Imperial Rome. So, like, what is the idea that Trump wanted to design federal buildings in the classic American architecture way that's equivalent to what Hitler did in the World War II? Is that the idea? It's completely nonsense. And the idea that Hitler did this for the same values that Trump is doing it for is completely nonsense. Again, like I said earlier, the whole idea, like, the Nazism, Nazi Party, the ideas that went into the Nazi Party and the Soviet Union, that all came from kind of the Karl Marx, like, rationality of socialism, and then what really sprang from the French Revolution, not the American Revolution or the British Enlightenment. It was from the French Enlightenment or French Revolution. That's where this whole nationalist community rights or individual rights started, and that's where the idea. That's where the Nazi Party got their ideas from. But it continues right here. But it is not that simple. For one thing, everyone was doing neoclassical architecture back then. The world's capitals are dripping with it. Look at London's National Gallery, Paris's Pantheon, Washington, D.C.'s Capitol building, for example. Meanwhile, fascism, Nazism equally embraced modernism, as with Giuseppe Tirigini's, so bad with names, influential Casa del Fascismo from 1936. Populist world leaders have had decidedly fixed tastes or defenses thereof. Trump's commercial properties are closer to the garishly glossy style known as dictatorship. Totalitarian states such as Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan boast monumental buildings by the likes of Norman Foster and Zaha Hadid. I'm so bad with it. I'm so sorry with this. So, okay, the idea. So the basic idea of this piece is trying to paint President Trump as like a fascist, white supremacist for wanting to design federal buildings in the United States in the classic way as they were designed for. It's just completely stupid. And this tells you like how the left is completely lost and rejected the values that went into building America. But here's another piece from Forbes about it, and it's titled "The Dark Side of Trump's Architectural Hit Fantasy." Style is the answer to everything. That's the opening line of a Charles Bukowski poem written in 1972, which wanders towards a few peculiar observations. Not many have style. Not many can keep style. I have seen dogs with more style than men. Donald Trump has style and has pursued its development for decades towards a final, widely broadcasted presidential act. Through style, he has become a corpulent, red-tide anti-Godiva. All the town's eyes are on him. To look away is taboo. Virality feeds on him. There is a yearning relief among his opponents that the time might come, maybe next year, when his legacy will be relegated to history books and old newspaper clippings. Some have warned that he will be televised, channeled into a surreal but profitable talking head that will captivate his base for years to come. But beyond the dubious stability of his border wall, we haven't reckoned with the possibility that Trump might leave behind more permanent architectural symbols to his administration. That is until Tuesday, when Architectural Record obtained a draft copy of an executive order titled "Making Federal Buildings Beautiful Again," an attempt to rewrite the existing guiding principles used by the General Service Administration to determine the design of federal buildings. The mandate would ensure that the classical architectural style shall be preferred and in default style of future federal design projects. If implemented, this shift could not only jeopardize the design of quality of billions of dollars worth of state construction projects, but also extend the ideology of Trump far beyond the ogling eyes of the media into the town itself. I love how they label that like Trump ideology, but honestly, the ideology that he's kind of talking about here with these classical architectural buildings right here is the American ideology and the values that went into it. It continues right here. It is off-putting. It is off-putting to pair classical architect with Donald Trump, not only because classical democratic values, but often butt heads with his policies. As a developer and brand, Trump had already left an indelible mark of a different kind. Towering motorist residences and casinos that share the same gaudy, goal-full spirit of his Manhattan penthouse. His border wall reveals a similarity, potent attempt at building big instead of beautiful, unlike his recent classical pipe dream that these displays of power and wealth are authentic products of the man who now sits in the Oval Office. Okay, first of all, there's a complete difference between casinos that were privately owned by him and federal buildings in the United States. Completely different right there. And I think he's right. Like, federal buildings should be designed in that way, in the classical way. Nonetheless, the legacy of classical architecture has been revived as much by authoritarian regimes as by democratic revolutionaries. Leah Finn might have laid out Washington, D.C. with the aspirations of nascent democracy, but one of the first revivals of this 18th architect was brought about by the cardinals, popes, and oligarchs of Renaissance Italy. Classical architect has continued to be deployed towards the aggrandizement of powerful institutions, finding unforgettable associations with goodness gracious, oh my god, I'm sorry, I cannot read to that for some reason. With totalitarianism, goodness, most notably under the Nazi regime and its chief architect Albert Speer. It makes no sense right there, because again, the ideas, completely two different ideas went into. Yes, the buildings may look similar, but they're completely different ideas went into building them. And this is all an attempt to label Trump as a Nazi and everything that they have been doing for 3 years at this point. So I mean, it's not that surprising at this point. But it's just so hilarious to see this, and again, it just shows you like how much the left has come to despise the classic American values here, and the ideas that went into American values, everything, and that's gonna hurt them in the long run. But again, overall, it's gonna hurt America in the long run if we continue to lose what the values are of America. It's not too long before we collapse as a nation, and I hope that doesn't happen. That's where we, as conservatives who know the true values of America, need to continue to go out into pursue the culture and tell these ideas. Alrighty, so I think that's all I have for today. So I mean, I'll be back here next week with whatever other stuff. Hopefully the news cycle will pick up next week. And so, yeah, I mean, again, you can find me on your favorite podcast listening sites, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Otherwise, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all next week. My name is Sean Clinton, and this is the God of Freedom Show. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, you can find me on your favorite podcast listening sites, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Thank you for listening.